Oh, well, I think, and that's so funny that you asked that because that's something that me and Miss Hawkins both have different opinions on.
Well, let's hear the two
And
of you.
so, yeah, that's why I said that's good because I actually think it's a lot being done, but it's not being shown. Like, it starts somewhere and it has been quiet and a silent killer for a long time. But now it's a lot of people and organizations that are starting to rise up and raise awareness. Now, the fear is, though, that we work closely with the police department and let them know, because some people are not coming to people with badges. They're intimidated by badges. But they'll come to me because I look like them. They'll come to Miss Hawkins because she looks like them. And so when we have other organizations that rise up in the name of domestic violence, it's important to keep it domestic violence. Because when you change it to things like bullying or drug awareness, it takes the attention off of domestic violence. If that's how we're going to start it, that's how we need to keep the awareness because that's the silent killer.
No, go on.
I'm not saying that bullying and drug awareness isn't important, but if you stand in the name of domestic violence, keep that stand with those that are around you, those that are watching you, because just like children are sponges, adults are too. And they're watching, and is somebody out there right now saying, them two look good. If they can come out and if they can survive, and not only survive, but speak about it publicly, I can do it too. I can get out of it too. So if we're gonna stand for that, we need to stay for that and don't change it for lights, cameras, and actions. If you're gonna be for domestic violence, say that and be that and work with the police for that. Do not let anybody else change that because once you change your stance, they're gonna feel shy about it. Why did she change? Why did they hide it? Why did they cover it up now? And the cycle repeats.
Ms. Hawkins, let's see if we can have you to think in terms of some of the things that people desperately need to know about domestic violence, and over the last 4 or 5 minutes to talk about some of those things.
That is real. The number one thing, that it is just real and it's out here. And we need to recognize the signs. You need to recognize how a person talks to you. You know, it's one thing to laugh and joke. And personally, myself now, because of what I've gone through, I don't want to be around if every time we're around each other, someone has to call me a name. You know, someone has to put me down. Whether they're saying it that is jokingly, you know, that's a taught behavior. Yeah. So that's how it starts off in a relationship. It starts off as a joke, and then it gets more and more, and just like our children are sponges soaking it up, we're soaking this up. So we need to pay attention. If you're starting a fresh new relationship, and it started off with you talking about each other, joking about each other, and it keeps going, there's never nothing sweet. There's you funny looking, or you this, no one would ever want to be with you, and they laugh behind it. They're just building up a bigger monster. And then it'll take it to the next stage where then it's a hit here and there. Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Then it hit again. Oh, I'm sorry, look what you made me do. You know, like I took your hands or took that bottle or took whatever and threw it at myself. And be aware with that, because after that is gonna come, is no more apologies. It's just gonna be flat out in front, just a smack for no reason, you know. And they always find a way to direct it to you that is your fault. Everything that goes wrong in your life, in their life, is directly related to you. You done this to me. You know, you making me act this way. So we need to be aware of our triggers. We need to be aware of the warning signs to let you know, hey, there's too much going on here. I'm not feeling good. So if you're in a relationship where you feel like you're inadequate, and you have no self-worth about it, you need to evaluate that relationship and seek help. I would never tell someone to leave because they'll have to want to leave on their own. And then I wouldn't want them to leave and then something happened, they said, I told them, so they did. So you need to look, what's it Michael Jackson said, starting with the man in the mirror? You need to look in the mirror yourself and you need to ask yourself, is this the life that God has laid out for me? Is this the man or the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with? Because with so much that's going on in the world, we should be working on building relationships, not just flings.
Do you think, Ms. Johnson, that there are folks out there this morning who can use this information, and because of some of the things that the two of you are saying, it will have an impact upon them.
Absolutely. And me and Ms. Hawkins had this talk one early morning that sometimes it gets frustrating because we're trying to reach out. We don't want people to go through what we went through, or worse, we don't want someone to bury the children to bury their parents. And so we reach out and we reach out, and sometimes we just feel ignored or like they don't care. But if one person hears and takes a stand for their own life and the life of their children and their loved ones, that's a multitude to us.
And we've got about a minute. Take this final minute, Ms. Hawkins, and say something in reference to this.
Again, I'm Tiffany Hawkins with V2V. I can be reached at 615-928-0793. If you have any issues, you have any questions, if I don't have the resources, or Sparkle with Superwomen Inc. do not have the resources, together we can combine and find help. And to bring your children out, March the 23rd, 2019 at 11 at the Northwest YMCA for Danger Dating. We must get awareness to our young girls about the situation that's going on. And we also would like to extend our hands to our government because we are grassroots. And everything that we do out of pocket. So we really can use, the help of our community, our government, to help us.
Mm-hmm. And you find that there's some sentiment in reference to what the two of you are doing in the community and all over, that people are becoming much more aware of some of the issues dealing with domestic violence, and that's what the two of you are trying to do, is simply to push that awareness. You don't expect to end it,
No.
but at least you do expect that once people become aware of it, they can be more conscious of some of the things that are coming at them, okay?
And a lot of times when we hear violence, they never really say domestic violence. They just say stop the violence.
Okay, very good. And let me thank the two of you, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is overcoming domestic violence. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about ways to overcome domestic violence, Pastor Kay Walker, Ms. Watkins, and Ms. Johnson. And let me welcome the three of you, Pastor Walker, Ms. Watkins, and Ms. Hawkins, and Ms. Johnson. Let me welcome the three of you to the show this morning and tell you how delighted we are to have you here. And the topic that we're talking about this morning is overcoming domestic violence. But before we get into that, let's give the three of you this opportunity to make some statements in reference to your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And by that time, we should be able to move into the second segment, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk about ways to overcome domestic violence. Let's start off with you, Pastor, and then have Ms. Johnson and Ms. Hawkins to give some information in reference to their background, education, and some of their experiences.
Well, first of all, thank Dr. Haney again. Been doing this with you for quite some time now, but every time it's a new experience. You know, I'm Pastor Kelvin L. Walker. I'm an associate pastor with Fairfield Missionary Baptist Church under the senior pastor, Howard Jones, Jr. Born and raised right here in Nashville, Tennessee, attended the public school systems here in Nashville. Had my own mindset. I was raised by good parents, but I had my own mindset. You know, I decided, you know, I was going to do life my way. And of course, when you start doing life your way as a teen and stuff like that, as a young boy, you know, you end up going astray. And I went astray, ended up on drugs, getting in trouble, ended up shooting somebody. And Judge Jenkins sent me into the military as opposed to sending me into the juvenile courts, into the juvenile lockup system, feeling that that would be much better for me. I would actually, thought was I would spend more time in there than I would in lockup. Of course, that didn't work out either because my behavior, you know, just escalated. You know, the more I was exposed to other ideas and other thoughts and other cultures and different things like that. But got out of the military, attended OIC, got a GED, did some studies at Tennessee State University, wanted to become a fashion designer. But my heroin addiction got the best of me, and of course, my life started spiraling downward, ended up incarcerated in the state prison system for a number of years, and got released and back into my old behaviors. And on August 24th, 1986, God divinely intervened in my life, stopped a 17-plus year drug addiction and a lifestyle of crime and crazy behavior, and called me into ministry. That's what I've been doing ever since.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Hawkins, what about your background, education, some of the information?
All right, my name is Tiffany Hawkins. I have a domestic violence nonprofit called V2V, From Victims to Victory. I was prompted to start it after coming out of domestic relationship for years. And the struggle going through it is really both, is need an education for both the man and the woman coming through it, because dealing with someone coming out of domestic violence is kind of like what we said earlier, it's like going to war. We kind of get shell shocked. So, and my husband has a program called Dads Against Destruction, where he's working with restoring the men. So it's a family thing that needs to be done when making that change.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Johnson?
My name is Sparkle. I'm 34 years old. I am also a survivor of domestic violence. I've been a survivor for 3 years. I was in a 6-year domestic violence relationship. I now have my own nonprofit. I'm a graduate from Hillsborough High School, and I'm scheduled to start TSU in August as an undergrad. And just like Pastor said, I got in a lot of trouble and things of that nature, and I'm actually writing a book called Prison to Prison, where I'm telling my story about being in prison for being a suspect once, and then also being a victim and being mentally and abusively in prison.
Mm-hmm. And so in a real sense, the three of you have a lot of information to give our audience concerning efforts to overcome domestic violence and some of the things that not only have impacted your lives, but more than likely impacted others as well, which is to say that when we get into these kinds of situations, not only does it have an impact upon us, but it also have an impact upon those around us. As a matter of fact, I think that is one thing that has come through quite clear, talking to the three of you, is that there are others outside of ourselves who are impacted by some of the things that we do. And so I'm delighted to have an opportunity to bring the three of you together so that we can talk about some of the issues of overcoming domestic violence. And so what we'll do is to take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll try to leave the audience with some information as to how people might be able to overcome domestic violence. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor Walker, Ms. Hawkins, and Ms. Johnson in reference to overcoming domestic violence. And so, Ms. Johnson, as we promised the last time, we'd give you an opportunity to start us off talking about methods whereby people might be able to overcome domestic violence. And of course, Ms. Ms. Hawkins will follow that, and Pastor Walker will give us some information in reference to that during this second segment. Let's start with you, Ms. Johnson, and then Ms. Hawkins. Let's start, Ms. Johnson.
Well, first, the most important thing is notice the red signs, but also act on those red signs. Or red flags, I'm sorry. When I had when I tell you all, I had the best red flags and ignored every last one of them. One of the best ones, he told me he hit women. I was playfully hit him in his shoulder, and he said, hey, hey, with a serious face, he said, hey, I hit women. And I was like, whatever. I didn't think anyone was that bold to say that. And then I met his mom, and his mom said, I'm gonna pray for you for getting involved with my son. And the third best red flag I had was he was going to court on a pending domestic violence charge. And I ignored, and this was in the first month that I met him, I found all this out. And went nowhere. And then 6 years later, that very man, and 3 children later, my life was almost taken. So notice those red flags, act on those red flags immediately.
What do you think about that, Ms. Hawkins?
I totally agree. A lot of times we want everything to gleam to be gold, and it's not. You know, we want what we think we want. And we also need to look at our children, look at the ones that's being involved in it, because we take down a whole family with dealing with someone who really don't care anything for us, have no respect at all for us. And I suggest counseling, not only for the surviving, because I say that we're always surviving, so we're not a survivor because we hadn't completed it. Get counseling for the surviving as well as the children. A lot of times the children are overlooked in that process because they may not have been the one physically, but that mental picture that we paint in their head for them listening to night after night, you know, watching mom get up and clean up her broken up house and trying to hide bruises, thinking that's normal. We want our children to know that violence is not the new normal. We need to take on the whole aspect of anyone that was connected as a support team to get the help. That's the main thing into working with them. And whomever we get involved with, they have to know up front, this is what happened. And you have to set your boundaries. Because of this to happen, I cannot allow this, this, or this at no time. And once we set those boundaries, stand on those boundaries. It doesn't do any good to have them set, like Sprockle said, see the signs and know they're there, and you still work on it as if you're God. So we can't ask him to help us if we're not gonna take the help that he gives us.
Pastor.
You know, Dr. Henry, I think a lot of times a lot of men, I think their manhood is founded on purely physical, you know, and in terms of thinking that, you know, in order for me to be in control, for me to be in charge, you know, then I have to be physical. You know, I have to put her in her place, you know, and then you got, I think, a lot of insecurities as well that goes along with that too. Man being insecure in terms of, in a woman here, a man wants a strong woman, but then when she displays her strength, then he becomes challenged or fearful, or that insecurity kind of rises to the surface, you know, and he's got this thing that goes on in his mind, you know, well, I'm going to put you in your place, and the only way that he know how to do it is through violence, you know, which makes no sense at all. And, you know, then you got men that think, you got the thought process out there that, well, I treat her right. She want me to hit her, you know. She ain't satisfied unless I put my hands on her and stuff like that. Of course, you know, we all know that don't make sense at all whatsoever. But that's a thought process that's out there that men walk around with, you know. And another thing is, you know, I tell men all the time, I say, man, one of the best things you can learn how to do is cry. You know, because you learn how to cry, man, you can get yourself, you can stay out of jail. You can avoid being an abuser, because a lot of times what it is, man, you know, you receive pain and hurt, emotional pain and hurt, and instead of dealing with that pain, then what you want to do is share it. You know, and then when you're sharing it, and it's not like you're sitting down having a conversation, say, well, you know, when you said this, my feelings were hurt or something like that. No, it's not that. You know, I'm going to share my pain with you in a physical way, because my manhood is founded on purely physical things, you know, and that's how I control. You know, if I'm dealing with another individual, another man, you know, you step to me, you know what I'm saying, we're going to get physical. You know, and then same thing, you know, that mindset, you know, goes into a relationship.